Hello friends, I'm Samnidhi Banerjee, and in today's video I'm going to be presenting a delightfully humorous story called Luncheon, written by William Somerset Maugham. So before we get on with the story, let us know something about the author. William Somerset Maugham, though trained to be a doctor, lived in Paris for 10 years as a struggling young author. He abandoned medicine after the success of his early novels and plays. His semi-autobiographical novel, Of Human Bondage, published in 1915, is his best work. In 1917, Maugham worked as a spy for the British government. So that was all about the author. Now we get on with the story. This story is basically revolving around the author. It is written in the first person point of view. And in this story, the narrator is caught in a very uncomfortable situation where he can neither go on with the situation nor can he extricate himself from it without pain, the meaning of which you'll understand as we go on with the story. So without further ado, let's start with the story. I caught sight of her at the play, and in answer to her beckoning, I went over during the interval and sat down beside her. It was long since I had last seen her, and if someone had not mentioned her name, I hardly think I would have recognized her. She addressed me brightly. "Well, it's many years since we first met. How time does fly. We're none of us getting any younger. Do you remember the first time I saw you? You asked me to luncheon." So in this paragraph, "how time does fly" is an expression which is used by this lady to state that time flies very fast, time is passing very fast. Okay, so let's continue. "Did I remember? It was 20 years ago and I was living in Paris. I had a tiny apartment in the Latin Quarter overlooking a cemetery, and I was earning barely enough to keep body and soul together. She had read a book of mine and had written to me about it." In this paragraph, cemetery means a graveyard where people are buried, and earning barely enough money to keep body and soul together is simply an expression to emphasize upon the fact that he was earning very little and it was not possible to be alive with that much of money. I answered, thanking her, and presently I received from her another letter saying that she was passing through Paris and would like to have a chat with me, but her time was limited and the only free moment she had was on the following Thursday. She was spending the morning at the Luxembourg Hotel, and would I give her a little luncheon at Foyot's afterwards? Foyot's is a restaurant at which the French senators eat, and it was so far beyond my means that I had never even thought of going there. But I was flattered, and I was too young to have learned to say no to people. I had 80 francs, gold francs, to last me the rest of the month, and a modest luncheon should not cost more than 15. If I cut out coffee for the next 2 weeks, I could manage well enough. I answered that I would meet my friend by correspondence at Foyot's on Thursday at 12:30. Now, French senators, or simply senators, mean members of the parliament. French senators, members of the French parliament. Then we have 80 francs or gold francs. It is an old currency used in France, form of currency. And Foyot's is a very high standard hotel, restaurant in France, located in France, where the narrator's friend by correspondence wants to meet the narrator. By correspondence means by the form of letter, in the form of letter. So the narrator and the woman are writing letters to each other. They don't know each other except in the form of letters. So that is why the word by correspondence is being used here. Let's continue. She was not so young as I expected, and in appearance imposing rather than attractive. She was in fact a woman of 40, a charming age, and she gave me the impression of having more teeth, white, large and even, than were necessary for any practical purpose. She was talkative, but since she seemed inclined to talk about me, I was prepared to be an attentive listener. So, this paragraph mainly has the description of the woman, how the narrator found her, and this paragraph definitely needs some attention. And we have some character traits of this woman in this paragraph too, like she was talkative and imposing rather than attractive. I was startled when the bill of fare was brought, for the prices were a great deal higher than I had anticipated. But she reassured me. I never eat anything for luncheon, she said. So, startled means in this paragraph surprised. The bill of fare is just an old form of menu which we say now, and anticipated means great deal more than I had anticipated, I had guessed. So the narrator had guessed the prices to be lower than they actually were. But what does the lady do here? She says that I never eat anything for luncheon. So she reassures the narrator. Oh, don't say that, I answered generously. I never eat more than one thing. I think people eat far too much nowadays. A little fish perhaps. I wonder if they have any salmon. Now, this lady is further emphasizing that she does not eat anything for luncheon. People eat too many things for luncheon nowadays, and she wants to eat salmon. Well, it was early in the year for salmon, and it was not on the bill of fare, but I asked the waiter if there was any. Yes, a beautiful salmon had just come in. It was the first they had got. I ordered it for my guest. The waiter asked her if she would have something while it was being cooked. No, she answered. I never eat more than one thing, unless you had a little caviar. I never mind caviar. Here what's happening is that the lady has already ordered two very expensive dishes. Caviar is the most expensive dish in the world. It is the eggs of a type of a fish that's commonly called sturgeon. So she wants to eat caviar and she wants to eat salmon, but wait, there are a lot more things on her list still. My heart sank a little. I knew I could not afford caviar, but I could not very well tell her that. I told the waiter by all means to bring caviar. For myself, I chose the cheapest dish on the menu, and that was a mutton chop. So here the narrator's heart sank a little means that he got a bit disappointed. He became a bit hopeless because he knew that he could not afford caviar. But on the other hand, he could not stop the lady from ordering caviar. He could not tell the lady that I cannot afford caviar. And hence, in spite of having a very little budget, limited budget, he tells the waiter to bring caviar by all means, and to compensate for that, he himself has the cheapest thing that was on the menu, that was a mutton chop. I think you're unwise to eat meat, she said. I don't know how much you can expect to work after eating heavy things like chops. I don't believe in overloading my stomach. Here the lady puts forth her opinion that she thinks that the narrator is very unwise to eat meat because meats are very heavy things and one cannot work after eating such heavy things. Then came the question of drink. I never drink anything for luncheon, she said. So this is her common dialogue that she is saying every time. I never drink anything for luncheon. I never eat anything for luncheon. I never eat more than one thing for luncheon. You see? Neither do I said promptly. So the narrator thinks that if he says that he does not drink anything for luncheon too, then the lady will not order anything. Except white wine. She proceeded as though I had not spoken. These French white wines are so light. They are wonderful for the digestion. So she is proceeding, that is continuing her speech as though the narrator had not said anything in between. So she is praising French white wines, and the narrator thinks that she wants to drink French white wines. What would you like? I asked, hospitable still, but not exactly effusive. So, what would you like? The narrator says. Now, the narrator is now sure that the woman's not going to drink nothing for luncheon. She will have something, and she will have something quite expensive, he's sure. So, he's saying, what would you like? Hospitably. Hospitably means generously, warmly, but not exactly effusively. Effusively means enthusiastically. So the narrator is not anymore enthusiastic. He does not want the lady to choose anything, extravagant. She gave me a bright and amicable flash of her white teeth. My doctor won't let me drink anything but champagne. She gave me a bright and amicable. Amicable, what does amicable mean? Amicable means, friendly or congenial, something like that. Flash of her white teeth. She smiled at the narrator brightly. And she further says that my doctor won't let me drink anything but champagne. Now, champagne too is a very expensive drink. I fancy I turned a trifle pale. I ordered half a bottle. I mentioned casually that my doctor had absolutely forbidden me to drink champagne. Here, the narrator is giving a very clever excuse for not ordering a whole bottle of champagne. He is saying that his doctor has absolutely forbidden him to drink champagne. So the lady is not thinking that the narrator does not have enough money to pay for the champagne. She's thinking that the narrator has some health issues owing to which his doctor has forbidden him to drink champagne. What are you going to drink then? Water. She ate the caviar and she ate the salmon. She talked gaily of art and literature and music, but I wondered what the bill would come to. When my mutton chop arrived, my guest took me quite seriously to task. So, here it is being told she talked gaily. Gaily here means happily, enjoyingly. Art, literature and music. Now here it is written art and literature and music to emphasize upon the topics of discussion between the two. And while this discussion is going on, the narrator has his mind not on the discussion but on what the bill would amount to, how much would be the bill, more than what he can afford or less than that. And when his mutton chop arrived, his guest took him seriously to task, that is to her task of rectifying his mistake, the mistake of buying a mutton chop for luncheon, as she thought it was a mistake. I see that you're in the habit of eating a heavy luncheon. I'm sure it's a mistake. Why don't you follow my example and eat just one thing? I'm sure you'd feel ever so much better for it. So even though the narrator is having only one thing for luncheon, still the lady is like, you should eat just one thing for luncheon. Like me, I have had salmon for luncheon, I have had caviar for luncheon, I've had champagne for lunch, and the mutton chop that you are having is too heavy. It's not definitely one thing. I am only going to eat one thing, I said, as the waiter came again with the bill of fare. She waved him aside with an airy gesture. So gesture means a movement of the hand, of her hand. She moved aside the waiter. No, I never eat anything for luncheon. Just a bite, I never want more than that. And I eat that more as an excuse for conversation than anything else. I couldn't possibly eat anything more unless they had some of those giant asparagus. I should be sorry to leave Paris without having some of them. So what is asparagus here? Green vegetable, the shoots of which are eaten. Now she wants to have asparagus after having salmon, caviar and champagne. And still she says that I don't eat anything for luncheon. I never eat more than one thing for luncheon, etc., etc. My heart sank. I had seen them in the shops and I knew that they were horribly expensive. My mouth had often watered at the sight of them. So in the first part, when we had seen that the lady is ordering caviar, the narrator's heart had sank a little. That is, he had become a trifle hopeless. Now his heart is fully sink. He's fully hopeless. He's sure that the bill is going to come out of his means, more than what he has. And he also knows something about the price of the asparagus. So he's also sure that this lady is ordering everything and anything that's expensive on the menu. Madame wants to know if you have any of those giant asparagus, I asked the waiter. I tried with all my might to will him to say no. A happy smile spread over his broad priest-like face, and he assured me that they had some so large, so splendid, so tender that it was a marvel. Now why does the narrator try with all his might to will the waiter to say no? Of course, because he has no money. Like he has not much money left to pay for the asparagus in addition to the salmon, caviar and the champagne. But a happy smile spread on the waiter's face, broad priest-like face. This is a description of the waiter. So this also has to be remembered. And how were the asparagus? So large, so splendid, so tender that they were a marvel. I'm not in the least hungry, my guest sighed, but if you insist, I don't mind having some asparagus. I ordered them. Aren't you going to have any? No, I never eat asparagus. Now, this lady is pretending that she is not the least hungry, and to emphasize that point, she is sighing. Sighing is a deep breath of satisfaction or sorrow, or if you have lot of stress, you sigh. So she is saying, I'm not the least hungry. If you still insist me to eat, I don't mind having some asparagus. She's like this. No, I never eat asparagus. This is something the narrator says. Why does he say this? Because he can't afford asparagus for two. I know there are people who don't like them. The fact is, you ruin your palate by all the meat you eat. So this lady is repeatedly accusing the narrator of eating meat-heavy luncheon and filling his stomach so much that he can't work, or ruining his palate so he can't eat asparagus. We waited for the asparagus to be cooked. Panic seized me. It was not a question now how much money I should have left over for the rest of the month, but whether I had enough to pay the bill. It would be mortifying to find myself 10 francs short and be obliged to borrow it from my guest. I could not bring myself to do that. I knew exactly how much I had. I made up my mind that if the bill came to be more than I had, I'd jump up with a dramatic cry and say, my pocket has been picked. Of course, it would be awkward if she had not the money enough either to pay the bill. Then the only thing would be to leave my watch and say I'd come back and pay later. Now, what the narrator is scheming is a plan of escape if he does not have enough money to pay the bill. Because now the question is not how much should be left for the rest of the month, but rather if he had enough to pay the money for all the extravagant, lavish dishes that his guest was ordering. Now, it would be mortifying, meaning it would be very embarrassing to borrow from his guest if he found himself some francs, like 10 francs short. Now, obliged here means forced, to be helped by his guest by her paying 10 francs for him because he didn't have the money, the correct amount of money to pay for the luncheon. Now he's thinking that he'd not be able to ask his guest to pay for the luncheon, to borrow money from her. So he says that he thinks that he knows how much he has, and if the bill's more than what he has, he'd jump up and say that his pocket is picked, and if the lady did not have enough money to pay the bill, then he would leave his watch with the hotel owners or the manager and say that he'd come back and pay later. The asparagus appeared. They were enormous, succulent, meaning juicy, and appetizing. The smell of the melted butter tickled my nostrils as I watched the abandoned woman, shameless woman that is, thrust them down her throat in large voluptuous mouthfuls. Voluptuous means very happy. Here it means by showing pleasure and enjoyment. In my polite way, I discoursed on the condition of the drama in the balcons. At last, she finished. Now, the narrator had a polite way of speaking. He discoursed, meaning spoke in a formal and very serious way, on a serious note about something. At last, she finished eating. Okay? Coffee, I said. Yes, just an ice cream and coffee. So even she is not going to have the coffee at the end of the luncheon without ice cream. She'd have ice cream even. I was past caring now, so I ordered coffee for myself and an ice cream and coffee for her. So she said that I'd have an ice cream and a coffee, and the narrator was past caring now. Why he was past caring? Because he knew that the bill would surely amount to something that he was not going to have. So he was past caring, that what is the use of caring? So he ordered coffee for himself and ice cream and coffee for the lady. You know, there's one thing I thoroughly believe in, she said as she ate the ice cream. One should always get up from a meal feeling one could eat a little more. Now, how does the sentence sound to even us? It seems like the lady is hungry still and wants to eat more now that she had eaten the ice cream. Are you still hungry? I said faintly. I asked faintly. So faintly, this word is being used because after eating so many things, salmon, caviar, asparagus, champagne, ice cream, coffee, she is still saying these kind of things, that one should always get up from a meal thinking that one could eat a little more. So the narrator is faint. He cannot believe his ears. Oh no, I'm not hungry. You see, I don't eat luncheon. I have a cup of coffee in the morning and then dinner. But I never eat more than one thing for luncheon. I was speaking of you. Oh, I see. Then a terrible thing happened. While we were waiting for the coffee, the head waiter, with a smile on his face, came up to us bearing a large basket full of huge peaches. But surely peaches were not in the season then. Lord knew what they cost. I knew too, a little later, for my guest, going on with her conversation, absent-mindedly took one. Now the narrator here says that she absent-mindedly took one, but in reality she was not absent-minded at all. She was very sure of what she was doing, and I believe that she was still hungry and she could eat even more food, but just on the show of politeness, she did not. You see, you filled your stomach with a lot of meat, my one miserable little chop, and you can't eat any more. But I've had just a snack and I shall enjoy a peach. Miserable means sorrowful, poor little chop. So the mutton chop is being deemed a lot of meat, as a lot of meat. So that's why the narrator is referring to the chop as one miserable little chop. The bill came, and when I paid it, I found that I had only enough for a quite inadequate tip. Her eyes rested for an instant on the 3 francs I had left for the waiter, and I knew that she thought me mean. But when I walked out of the restaurant, I had the whole month before me and not a penny in my pocket. So for an instant means for a moment, she saw that the narrator had given only 3 whole francs for the waiter as a tip, and the narrator was sure that she thought him mean. Mean means pitiless or not kind, unkind. Follow my example, she said as we shook hands, and never eat more than one thing for luncheon. I'll do better than that, I retorted. I'll eat nothing for dinner tonight. Now the narrator is at last enraged of this stupid, statement that never eat more than one thing for luncheon. So the narrator retorts now, I'll do better. I'll not eat anything for dinner tonight. Humorist, she cried gaily, jumping into the cab. You are quite a humorist. Now humorist means a person with a good sense of humor, someone who can make others laugh, someone who can crack good jokes. But I have had my revenge at last. I do not believe that I am a vindictive man, but when the immortal gods take a hand in the matter, it is pardonable to observe the result with complacency. Today she weighs 21 stone. So the narrator, as after the story had ended, it was set in the past, the narrator is writing it now, and then as an afterline of the story, he adds that I have had my revenge at last, the revenge of not having a penny in my pocket and the whole month before me just because the woman had eaten so many things. What was the revenge? Now the man had not used his hands, or the man had not himself taken any revenge. The immortal gods, immortal means people who do not die, they had taken a hand in the matter. Hand in the matter means they had played a huge role in the revenge, and the narrator observed the results with complacency. What does complacency means? Peace of mind. Calmly he observed the results. Today she weighs 21 stone. Now 1 stone equals 6.4 kilograms. So how much would 21 stones be? More than 126 kilograms. Definitely more than that. So that was all for this story, and there are a lot of tricky questions that can come from this story. So I hope you learned something from this video. If you like this video, do share it to your friends so that they can also get something of knowledge, something worth learning from this video. Like and subscribe to my channel to get more videos of this sort, and if you want to hear more videos right now, click on the screen. Thank you.